Hey, how are you doing? I am Vigar, and today we are looking at whether or not you should buy an eGPU setup. There is no doubt that whether you want higher FPS in games, better GPU acceleration, or simply just more graphics performance, you are gonna benefit from having desktop grade discrete graphics. But is it necessarily worth going out and buying a potentially unsupported Thunderbolt PCIe box, potentially a PSU, and a discrete graphics card? Well, it depends, and there has been a lot of new things and changes to the eGPU market while I have had my GPU for almost 3 years. It comes down to two things. It's the computer that you want to use the eGPU with and your use case. When it comes to the computer, there are essentially three scenarios. You're either running Thunderbolt 1, Thunderbolt 2, or Thunderbolt 3. Graphics over Thunderbolt 1 and 2 is not officially supported, but it is basically plug and play in Windows and macOS. And there are a couple of things you need to consider, especially with Thunderbolt 1. Thunderbolt 1 is rated for one-way 20 gigabits per second. So if you go out and buy a high-end GPU, you're probably going to lose 20 to 15% performance because of the limitations of the interface you're using because of Thunderbolt 1. But if you're using a computer that is old enough to have Thunderbolt 1, the CPU in the computer is probably too old to be able to keep up with a high-end desktop GPU anyway. So you're most likely going to be held back by the bottleneck, which is the CPU in the laptop and not necessarily the interface itself. For Thunderbolt 2, it's a bit better because you have two-way 20 gigabits per second. On my external 960, I'm not really losing any performance of what I should get from a 960, so that is good. You might lose a bit performance though if you use something like a Titan XP or a 1080, but I don't really suggest doing that anyways. I'm coming back to that in just a second. The most important thing to consider when you have Thunderbolt 1 and Thunderbolt 2 is, of course, that it is not supported, so the options for what kind of enclosures you can have is a bit limited. I am using the Ekidio Thunder 2 with an ITX 960, and this is a really small graphics card, and it fits with a clearance of about 2 millimeters. So really a reference design card is not going to fit inside of this box. And I have to power it as well, so I can't really have the box closed because of the power cable that has to power the GPU. Even if you have a GPU like the 750 Ti that only requires power from the PCIe slot, the 75 watts from the PCIe slot, that is not going to work with any Thunderbolt 1 or Thunderbolt 2 enclosure because these PCIe slots only provide 25 watts of power. So you are gonna need an external power supply to power any GPU in a Thunderbolt 1 or Thunderbolt 2 enclosure. I do have a video on how you can use a single external power brick to power the whole thing, and you can check it out right here. So for Thunderbolt 1 and Thunderbolt 2, you have to get an enclosure that costs about $250, and you have to buy an external power supply that is probably going to cost you around $48. So in total, for just the enclosure and the power supply, you are at about $300. For Thunderbolt 3, things are a bit better because graphics is officially supported over Thunderbolt 3. As you probably know, Razer has an official product, the Razer Core, which supports external graphics over Thunderbolt 3. But the Razer Core is really expensive and it uses a full-size ATX power supply, which is stupid for just powering a single GPU. I know I did back in the day, but when you're gonna sell a commercial product that is only supposed to work with a single GPU, why do you include a full-size ATX power supply? It's stupid. You're paying for way more than what you get. You can get an enclosure like the Ekidio Thunder 3, which is essentially the same enclosure as the one I have, the Ekidio Thunder 2, except it is longer and it's bigger, so you can fit a full-size graphics card even if you have a third-party cooler on it, so you're not limited to just reference designs. And it also has a PSU in the box, you can get it with either just over 300 watts or just over 500 watts. But 300 watts is more than enough to power any discrete graphics today. And that box is going to cost you under $300. Whether or not you are running Thunderbolt 1, 2, or 3, there are two things with your computer that you have to consider. The first one is the hardware of your laptop, and the second is Optimus support. I'm going to talk about the first one first, which is the hardware in your laptop. You have to consider that in your laptop, you're most likely not running a desktop grade CPU. And really, desktop grade graphics are designed for desktop grade CPUs. So when you have a mobile CPU, you might end up bottlenecking the eGPU with a less powerful CPU. So going out and buying a really powerful graphics card like a 1080 is not really worth it if you have an aging dual core CPU in your laptop. I am, as I said, running a 960 in my MacBook Pro, which has a dual core Ivy i5 processor running at 3.4 gigahertz. And a 960 is really as high as I should go before I start bottlenecking the GPU with my processor. Since it is a dual core, any Ubisoft game or generally a game that requires 4 cores is not even gonna launch. But since I have a GPU that kind of fits the performance of my CPU, I am able to utilize all of the power in the GPU and all of the power in my CPU. I can comfortably run the games I want to play in 1080p using this setup. So it really comes down to what you want to use your eGPU for and the laptop you have. Now, the second thing you need to consider with your laptop is Optimus support. And this kind of blends over into your use case. If you just want to use your GPU for GPU acceleration in like video editing or 3D rendering or anything like that, you don't have to consider any of this because the eGPU doesn't have to power any display. You can just use it as an accelerator alongside the GPU that powers the display in your laptop or computer or whatever. But if you want to run desktop applications or a game or something that requires a GPU to power the actual display, then you need to consider Optimus technology. In a laptop, the internal display is either connected to a discrete graphics card in your laptop or it's connected to the integrated graphics on your CPU. So when you plug in an external graphics card, that graphics card is not really powering the display in the laptop. The display in the laptop is powered either by the CPU or the discrete graphics card in the laptop. And what Optimus technology does is it allows the video signal from the eGPU or any GPU to run through the PCIe slots and through the CPU and into the display. But this requires a CPU that supports Optimus technology. And if you have a discrete graphics card, you're not going to be able to use the internal display because there is no way today to have one GPU send its video signal through the PCIe slots and through to another GPU that then powers the display. The internal display of the laptop is then going to be powered by the GPU in the laptop itself. And if that is the case, you have to use an external display that is connected to the video output on your eGPU. And then any application that you want to run with the eGPU has to run in full screen on that external display, while the internal display on the laptop is being powered by the discrete graphics in the laptop itself. But whether or not you have a discrete graphics card in your laptop is not the only thing that affects Optimus. Right now, you need an Intel Core 2 Duo processor or an Intel Core processor, so either an i3, i5, i7, or i9, and you need an NVIDIA eGPU. It does not work with AMD GPUs. So if you either have an external AMD GPU, an internal discrete graphics card, or you do not have a Core 2 Duo or Intel Core processor, you will have to rely on an external display. And that kind of affects the use case of the eGPU setup. I have a MacBook Pro 13-inch, so I only have the integrated graphics, and I'm running an i5 core processor, and I have a 960, which is an NVIDIA GPU. That means Optimus works on my computer. And I have a video on how you then can use Optimus to get the GPU to run on the internal display in Windows, and you can check out that video right here. So I can just pick up my eGPU, which is a relatively small box. This is just a really small graphics card, and the box isn't really too big. I put that in my backpack, my laptop in my backpack, and a single external power brick, and that's all. That is a fully functional gaming PC. I can run a lot of new titles at 1080p 60 frames per second. That means I can go wherever I want, and I can have a really powerful gaming PC in my backpack. I'm currently studying at the other side of the country of my hometown, so when I head back to my hometown for any vacations and I want to bring my gaming computer, I don't have to bring a big desktop computer and an external display and a keyboard and a mouse and everything. I just need to bring this simple box into a backpack, and that's it. I can then play whatever games I want. And that is the use case of an eGPU. Because as we established, you have to pay around $250 to $300 for the enclosure and PSU, and then you also need to get an actual graphics card. And any graphics card that I recommend is going to be in the price range of $200 to $300. I don't recommend going too far above $300 because you're then going to bottleneck the GPU with either the Thunderbolt interface or with the CPU in your laptop. So generally the whole setup is going to cost between $500 and $600. And some of you are going to say you can just build a really good gaming desktop PC for $500 to $600. And yes, that is true, but that is not the point. I cannot pick up a desktop gaming PC, an external monitor, and a keyboard and a mouse, put it in my backpack, and go on an airplane. Because that is not the use case of an eGPU. The point of having an eGPU is you have a laptop that you can use on the go, at school, whatever. You can come home, you can dock it into the eGPU, and it can run up to 4 displays, including the internal display on your laptop. And then if you want to bring the computer somewhere, you can just pick up the eGPU, put it in your backpack, put the laptop in your backpack, and that's it. As long as you can run with Optimus technology. And that is the use case of the eGPU. And if that use case doesn't fit you, then I don't think you should buy an eGPU. If you have a use case where you can have a desktop computer sitting stationary at one place, then you should go use the $500 to $600 and build a gaming desktop computer, because you are going to get a way better experience from that. But if you want to use Optimus technology and you want to bring the whole thing with you, then you might want to consider an eGPU. And when it comes to support for eGPUs, Apple announced at WWDC 2017 that they are officially supporting eGPUs in macOS High Sierra. We don't know yet if it's only going to be AMD GPUs, if it's only going to be GPUs that Apple says is okay, like for example the 500 series and Vega GPUs. We don't know. I'm going to test this once High Sierra is officially out this fall. I'm going to test it with NVIDIA GPUs. I'm going to test it with hopefully a 500 series AMD GPU and an older AMD GPU. But either way, I have a video on how you can use an external eGPU in macOS, which you can check out right here. You don't even need High Sierra to do that. You can run any eGPU. It's basically plug and play in macOS. Check out the video. And in Windows, it's also basically plug and play. And if you want to use Optimus technology, as I said, I have a video for that as well. So that is basically it for this video. It really comes down to your use case of an eGPU, whether or not you have a computer that suits an eGPU, and if you have the money to spend on an eGPU. All the videos I mentioned on how to use an external power supply if you have a Thunderbolt 1 or Thunderbolt 2 GPU, if you want to run the GPU on the internal display in Windows, if you want to run an eGPU in macOS, and information on the Apple support for eGPUs. I'm going to have all of the videos linked down in the description. If you liked the video and found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and maybe share it with a friend that also might benefit from this information. If you want to watch any of the other videos, I'm going to have them linked around here. If you want to subscribe to the channel for more videos on eGPUs, on programming, on technology, whatever, you can press the bubble right here to subscribe. And well, that's it. So I am Vigar. Thank you for watching.